Welcome to Beyond the Muscle. So, in this episode, there is no guest. It's the end of the year, or in fact, it is the beginning of 2025. So, Happy New Year to you all listening. And I wanted to reflect on my 2024 comeback season. So, yeah, if you're planning on listening, unfortunately, it's just me today. But don't despair, as we've got some really exciting guests coming on over the next couple of months. So, yeah, for those listening on Spotify, I will be using photos just to highlight certain points throughout this episode, but hopefully you can still get some value out of this one regardless. So yeah, as I mentioned before, I've had 9 years off bodybuilding since competing my first season in 2015. And yeah, it wasn't planned basically. So the plan was to take like a 2 to 3 year off season after 2015 and come back with a much improved physique. But yeah, we had a family, we had a couple of kids, and it just wasn't the right time for me to be getting back on the bodybuilding stage, essentially. So I'd still been training like a bodybuilder since 2015. And in fact, post 2015, my training was very much like it is now, currently very focused. But it was turning into a bit of a dreamer bulk. And I ended up, I think, a little over 20 kilos. Actually, no, it's pretty much dead on 20 kilos over my stage weight, which, yeah, is a bit much. It's a bit much for me. I know some guys can get away with it, but for me, that's a bit too heavy. Um, so yeah, anyway, I tidied things up a little bit over the years and I still continue to train, but I did pursue other interests outside of bodybuilding, fitness related. Um, and the chances are I likely retained most of my muscle mass, as the amount of volume needed for hypertrophy needed to retain muscle is a lot less than what is needed to grow muscle. So you can actually get away with doing fairly little, provided the intensity is high enough if you just want to preserve muscle mass. So yeah, during that period, so from about 20, actually this was, yeah, from like 2018 to 2020, still trained like a bodybuilder with a bit less volume, muscle preservation, let's say. Then from 2020 onwards, I started running quite seriously, so distance running. And yeah, despite not really having the physique for it, I was running like 20 to 40K a week. And in fact, in 2023, so the year before I competed, as in yeah, last year. I was running, yeah, half marathon distances at some points too. Did a few of those. While still training for hypertrophy slash muscle preservation 4 times a week. Although at that point, I can safely say that I was still adding muscle whilst, yeah, attaining those quite long distances. And yeah, anyway, I got to the summer of 2023 and I thought to myself, I still look good. I still look like a bodybuilder despite all the running I'm doing. And yeah, I won how I do on a bodybuilding stage. So yeah, in the summer of 23, I contacted my old friend Josh. So Josh was a friend of mine, someone I coached back in 2017. And yeah, he'd become quite a prominent figure in the natural bodybuilding scene. So I asked him for some advice, and I hadn't told him this at the time. But even then, I was planning on hiring him as a coach for my 2024 season. So yeah, eventually we met up for a session and did a bit of posing post workout. And his assessment was, yeah, you still got it. And yeah, despite not really dedicating those 8 or so years to purely gaining muscle, I think I'd still made some improvements since my 2015 physique. So yeah, we got to the end of the year. We planned some shows for the 2024 season, and the shows we planned were the BMBF Southern in the Masters, the WMBF Supernaturals in the Masters, and also the UKDFBA, yeah, Heart of England in the Open class. And yeah, at this point, I was really pumped, super excited to get back on stage. Um, so yeah, one area where I struggled with in 2015, quite a bit was posing. So both from a fitness perspective and just from a like an aesthetic perspective, I just didn't spend enough time on this aspect. And yeah, I could basically hit a show-winning front double bicep, but yeah, that was about it. So I contacted Andrew Chappelle, and we had some really productive posing sessions that started like even before my prep began, actually. So what was it? Yeah, early 2024. And yeah, those were really, really helpful. Um, so yeah, basically onto my contest prep, which started mid-Feb 2024. And yeah, it started smoothly, as I think all preps should start smoothly as calories are high. And yeah, my calories were high too. I started on about 2,700 calories, with zero cardio. I wasn't even tracking macros at that stage. I was just tracking calories and having like a minimum protein target. And in fact, I did that for the first 3 months of prep. Once again, no cardio, just hitting a calorie target, protein target, and getting a rough step count for the week. And even then, my steps were not particularly high at that point. I think I was doing maybe 6 or 7K steps a day. So yeah, not very high at all. But yeah, as the fat started to come off, it was pretty obvious to me that the shape was there. And with the extra posing, I was pretty confident going into that first show. So I started prep around, I think about 83 kilos. Yeah, 83. I got down to about 73 for the first show. So about a 10 kilo drop. And this is over obviously it sounds like a lot, but this is over the course of, yeah, from February to August. So yeah, 6 months. Yeah, 6 months there. However, fatigue was actually pretty high going into show number one. And yeah, I think basically we had to do a little bit of digging towards that latter stage of prep. And yeah, that did certainly ramp the fatigue up. So yeah, going into show one, Josh and I, we did like a carb depletion, followed by a rapid carb backload for this show. And yeah, very, very full, really, really full look going into that one. And yeah, onto the show date, it was a great feeling being back in that stage after 9 years. Yeah, it felt good, like yeah, dusting off the cobwebs, as they say. But it really did feel good to be back on stage. Yeah, soaking in the atmosphere. It's great to have a huge support group with me as well. And yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah, and I won my class, and then it was didn't win the overall. Dan Sutcliffe won the overall, the tremendous physique. Um, yeah, it was a looking back at my physique that I think we definitely had some spillover there. So we went quite high with the carbs, and yeah, I love the fullness we brought. A lot of fullness going into that show, but there's definitely a bit of spillover. So that was the last time that happened. Um, yeah, in back to my actual class. Yeah, I wasn't the most conditioned athlete in my class, but yeah, basically I won due to my structure and just the amount of muscle I was carrying in, especially at this stage. So yeah, it was a really good first show and great to be back. But yeah, after this show, we had 3 weeks the next one, and yeah, Josh, he wanted to make sure I had a lot less fatigue going into that show. So what we did, we actually cut out the carb depletion, and we didn't use that, in fact, for any of my upcoming shows. So by carb depletion, basically we were dropping things to, it wasn't even that low. I think it was 90 to 100 carbs maximum, with obviously the fats high, the protein high, and the calories matched to what they would be on a regular low day. But yeah, I did not enjoy those carb depletion days, as I'm sure most bodybuilders don't. But anyway, at that point, we actually upped my calories a little bit after that first show, and I went away to France with the family for the first time ever. I had to be on prep whilst on holiday, and honestly, it was a challenge. So yeah, not so much from like an adherence perspective. I was always going to stick to the plan. That was never an issue. But just from like an enjoyment perspective, it wasn't really the same. However, you got to do what you got to do as a bodybuilder, and yeah. So after 5 weeks, 5 weeks after the Southern, I had the UK DFBA Heart of England. So yeah, for this show, I wasn't competing in masters, but in an open class, and I got placed in the tall class, which is a bit odd as I'm only 5'9", on a good day as well. But yeah, the condition was drastically improved this time around going into show two. I dropped how much? Yeah, 1.1 kilo, no, 1.3 kilos. So yeah, I've gone from 73.3 to 72, like a morning stage weight. And yeah, it drastically improved the condition. And yeah, our peaking strategy worked a ton better this time as well. So basically, instead of like a 1 day carb up, we carved up over 2 days, although a bit more of a modest carb up this time. And yeah, the look was far, far better. Plus, obviously, I'd had yeah, an extra 5 weeks of fat loss at that point, albeit in a less aggressive manner. Yeah, but also made some tweaks to posing as well, which yeah, really helped the overall look, especially from the front. So yeah, in this show, they only placed the top three here, and I didn't manage to get a placing, unfortunately. So yeah, one part of me kind of gets it. I mean, the men's open tall class, the judges' eyes are going to be drawn to mass, right? And overall stage presence. And whilst I have the condition and some good shape, I didn't have the mass to hang with the biggest bodybuilders out there. And I was probably upwards of 15 kilos lighter than some of the bigger athletes on stage on that day. So yeah, I do feel I was a little bit overlooked in this class. I've looked at the photos. Um, yeah, I would have had me in top five, potentially battling for top three. But yeah, that's the way it goes in bodybuilding sometimes. If you get an undesirable result, you just got to take it and move on. But yeah, that was show number two in the UK DFBA. So from that point, I had 3 weeks until the British finals. So the BMBF British finals, and 4 weeks until the WMBF Supernaturals. So this was going to be my first ever back-to-back weekend of shows. And the aim was just to maintain this level of condition and freshness going into these shows. So yeah, after the disappointment of the last result, I was pretty eager to get back on stage. And yeah, actually looking back, despite dealing with it well at the time, I just had this slight feeling of added pressure just to prove myself again, having not placed in the last show. So yeah, it was just there niggling in the back of my mind. Calories were still good, so they were still at a reasonable level at this stage, and steps were quite low too. So I'd say I was on about 50 to 60K steps a week at this point. And yeah, once again, no dedicated cardio sessions. This was just me going for a walk. We're lucky to live near a lovely woods. So yeah, often walk around the woods or just on the street. Sometimes in the morning, sometimes fasted. Makes no difference. Um, so yeah, on to the British final. Weight had dropped even further, so I was actually 71.5 for this show here. So half a kilo down, and yeah, very light. And I definitely tightened up a little bit. Whether it was a better look is debatable, as I was getting into that zone in my physique where more condition means a slight sacrifice in shape. And yeah, I have to be careful not to push that too much. But either way, I was happy with the look. And the Leatherhead Theatre has this little area upstairs with natural lighting coming in from the window. And yeah, it's the most, how do I say this? It's lighting that makes you look really, really good. The word escaped my brain there. But yeah, Josh took a progress video of me here, and yeah, the condition did look ridiculous at this point. So yeah, my aim going into this show was to win, of course, and battle for that DFAC Masters Pro card. But I was beaten in a really tough battle by Christian Guastella from Italy. He's a seasoned Masters athlete, incredibly aesthetic physique, and yeah, he's a world-class poser as well. So yeah, I don't know how the judges scored this one, but my guess is it was pretty close. He had me beating some shots for sure, but I was also clearly stronger in others. That was a good battle. So yeah, looking back on this, I was initially upset with second. I got an invite to represent Britain on the DFAC Worlds. Yeah, I was actually a bit bummed not to win this. But yeah, obviously, still on reflection, having not competed for 9 years, second in Britain is still a great result in the Masters, and it was great to be back on that BMBF stage again. So we booked Germany for the DFAT World, which would be my final show of the season, and then just a week after that second place in the BMBF finals, I travelled to Birmingham for the WMBF Supernaturals. So yeah, I was really excited again. So competing with another new federation, and it was a really, really good standard again. So I finished in third place this time to two great athletes. There's Innocent Kalu, who went on to become world champion and get his WMBF pro card, and UT had Taylor from Finland. He's a Finnish national champion and another great athlete as well. So yeah, the WMBF also have a golden era round for each class we perform. You each perform like a classic pose from the front, one side, the other, and then the back. And I won that class, which was that was a nice little bonus um, in that show. So yeah, I went on to compete in the overall for that. I didn't win that overall. Shout out to my buddy Michael, another one of my coach's clients, who ended up being the overall Mr. Golden Era for that show. But yeah, what was interesting in this is that I went from being disappointed with second place to actually being pleased to get a top three. In this case, I wasn't in contention for the win. I have to be honest. Innocent, who won, he had like one of the densest physiques I've ever seen in person. So much thickness, and he was a deserved winner. And UT in second place looked great with like a really good balance to his physique as well. Um, so yeah, I was pleased. I was pleased with third place there. So I got an invite to the WMBF Worlds. in Boston to represent Britain for that one too, but it just wasn't feasible to do two worlds in one season. And yeah, we couldn't leave the kids this time. And I know my physique would really have started to deteriorate as it was another 5 weeks, I think. Yeah, after the first world final. So yeah, it was just too much time. So yeah, when dieting down for bodybuilding shows, the way I kind of view it is like this. So your body fat is coming down. The closer and closer you get to stage condition, then you have this small zone, okay? And this zone is where you're at your very best, like your peak physique. And yeah, before that zone is where you spend most of your prep, getting ready for stage. And in fact, you can get by in like a qualifier or two, being outside of this kind of peak physique zone. Then you have this small window where you're at very best, you're most conditioned, you're full, you're holding on to some shape, but it's still a spectrum and maybe subjective as to whereabouts in this zone yields like the best look for you. And then you dig too far, you could lose this shape and you're no longer in this zone of, let's say, peak, peak physique. And yeah, I've dropped way below this zone before, back in my first season in 2015, after dieting too hard, losing shape, losing muscle mass. And I feel I just dipped into it after these two shows. Yeah, I think this is partly because I've been very lean for quite some time, but also, unfortunately, I had a stomach bug a week after this show and a week before the WMBF Worlds, which completely took it out of me. It really wrecked me. Um, yeah, I can tell you one thing, having a stomach bug when you're stage lean, it's a different animal altogether. It was pretty rough. But yeah, putting that aside, going into the defect worlds, I do feel like I felt like I'd recovered from the bug and felt fine, but my physique definitely lacked that fullness or that kind of pop. See, I'd say I still look good, but I wasn't at my definitely wasn't at my absolute best. So yeah, this little kind of zone theory I have, I was definitely in that zone for the middle three shows. Absolutely. You can make an argument for any of those shows, like being my peak 2024 shape. Had the fullness, had the shape, but I felt like I'd lost just a little bit of that going into Worlds. So yeah, on the day, it was a competitive class again, and I was in pretty much all of the call-outs as the judges were kind of figuring out where to place me in this one. And yeah, once again, I got a third place at Worlds, which I was pleased with at the time. I think pleased because deep down I knew I wasn't at my very best, but also top three at Worlds after this much time off. Yeah, it was a very solid result. But yeah, I think with that top three, any one of us could have won it. So we all brought very, very different physiques to the stage that time. So the guy who won, Martin Paller, I think that's how you pronounce it, from Austria, he had a lot of thickness up top. An Italian in second, Marino Guidini. He was huge, but just not quite as conditioned, but with perhaps a bit more balance than the guy in first. And then I was in third place. I was definitely the leanest of the top three and like the best lower half for sure, certainly from the front. But I think I just lacked a bit of fullness and density overall to take that top spot. But yeah, like I said, it was close. And yeah, it's hard to know what the judges are looking for as well sometimes. Um, Obviously, yeah, some look for a bit more density, some look for condition, some look for a bit of both, a bit of shape, which is what you've got to try and bring. You've got to try and bring it all really. But yeah, either way, yeah, to sum up my comeback season, I'd say it was a success. Yeah, despite my advancing years, this was only my second season in bodybuilding too, and I've managed to compete in 5 shows whilst bringing a better physique than I did back in 2015. Yeah, and this year, being I'm a little bit older, I also managed to navigate like this kind of post-prep phase a lot better. So yeah, I'm like I mentioned in previous podcasts, like not binging and gaining weight at an appropriate weight rates and just getting comfortable with letting go of that stage conditioning. So yeah, back in 2015, I actually found it quite hard post-show. I was just Firstly, I was in a state where I just wanted to eat everything, as most bodybuilders are when they get their lean. I also really didn't want to let go of that conditioning, and I found it tough. But yeah, this time I've gone in with a completely different mentality, and yeah, it's been a whole lot easier. So yeah, overall, definitely a success, and yeah, um, my aim is to have 2 to 3 years off, basically, before coming back again. Um, this is obviously a discussion to have with the family. But yeah, that is the aim. I think there's a lot of improvements I can make to physique. I think in terms of my chest, my arms, potentially my shoulders, maybe my quads, I've got most of the gains I'm going to make. But yeah, hamstrings, glutes, back thickness, there's definitely there's definitely still more growing to do there, I think. And yeah, the aim is to come back with even more balance than my physique. I think generally I've got a pretty balanced physique anyway, but I think we can improve there. A bit of back thickness, bit more on the hamstrings, and yeah, we can get an even more balanced physique. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'm in a really good place with training at the moment, and I'm looking forward to getting back on stage again. But that pretty much sums it up, guys. This has been a short one. I just wanted to give you guys a little update on how my 2024 season went. Um, but yeah, that is all, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.